Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to CCI Haronia's Lunch and Learn webinar series. I am Sonja Hodis, and I am your moderator today, as well as a condo lawyer. And joining me today are 12 other professionals who work in condo land in a variety of different capacities. Some of them you've seen before in our webinars, but there are a few new faces that are joining us today. And some of our speakers, they're joining us from the annual condo conference that is taking place in Toronto today and tomorrow, which is being put on by CCI Toronto and ACMO. So if you're at the condo conference, let us know in the chat box. We're going to be bringing back our popular webinar today, and this is our pros, tips, and tricks webinar. It is a very fast-paced webinar, so be sure you are ready for the ride. All of our professionals are going to be sharing one tip in 3 minutes or less, but don't worry, if you can't get it all down, fast enough, we've got you covered. Today's webinar is being recorded as we do all the time, and we will be posting this webinar in about 7 to 10 days on our website and on our YouTube channel. So if you need to watch it again, you'll be able to do so within a week or so. One of the interesting things that I find about working in the condo industry is that there's just so much that you need to know about so many different things, and therefore you're always learning new things. And today we've brought together 12 experts from a variety of different fields, from law to insurance, reserve funds to project management, finances to fire, condo management to selling and buying condos, and from mold to lighting to VoIP. We've got you covered across the gambit. So we're going to have some really great tips, and I'm sure there's going to be something new that you're going to learn today. During the webinar, if you do have any questions, be sure to put them in the Q&A box, and our panels, we're going to try and answer them the best that we can by the end of this webinar. And if you are a property manager, be sure you put in the chat box your name and company name so that you can record your attendance at today's webinar for CMRO purposes. Also, when you're in the chat box, keep an eye on it during the webinar, because you will find information about all of our speakers in the chat box, thanks to our chat box master, Debbie Dale. Thank you for all your help, Debbie, in taking care of the chat box. You'll find the speakers' names, contact information, a little bit about them. And if you want to follow up with them after today's webinar, you can use that contact information to do so. And speaking of thanks, I want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. If you've been to any of our webinars, you know that the reason these webinars are free of charge is because we have the generous support of our sponsors. And so I want to take this opportunity today to thank our sponsors. We have Aaliyah Associates, Condominium Lawyers, Premium Consulting Engineers, Common Ground Condo Law, and Engineering Link. If you want to find out more information about any of our sponsors, all you need to do, go to our homepage, cciharonia.com, scroll to the bottom, find their logo, click on their logo. That'll take you to their website, and you can get information such as contact information and the types of services that they provide. The other way to find out information about them is if you just go to today's event page on our website, you'll find their logo there, and you can just click on that logo and it'll take you to their website as well. So thank you again to all of our sponsors. A couple more housekeeping things that I just need to go over before we get into the tips and tricks from our pros. I just want to make sure that you know who CCI is. And if this is the first time you've attended one of our webinars and you don't know who CCI is, well, we are the Canadian Condominium Institute, and we are an independent nonprofit organization formed in 1982. We have chapters across the country, 8 alone in Ontario. And CCI Haronia is one of those Ontario chapters. CCI's main objective is education. And we also advocate, though, for condos, and we represent all those involved in condos, from owners to directors to professionals, and we encourage all those stakeholders to work together. If you are not a member of a CCI chapter, you can go to our national website, cci.ca, to find a chapter near you. If you want to become a member of the CCI Haronia chapter, all you need to do is go to our website, cciharonia.com. You can register online and become a member of our chapter. We would love to have you. And while you're on the CCI national website, you might want to check out the Resource Center, which is a collection of material related to condo issues from across the country, coast to coast, from all of our chapters. It's a great resource center, and there's a lot of good information there. So if you're looking to find an answer to a condo related question, you might want to check that place out first. You can also link to the National Resource Center on the CCI Haronia website page. And don't forget to follow CCI Haronia on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. And if you want to check out our newsletter, Condo Buzz, it is available on our website to download free of charge. And you'll also find recordings of our past webinars there. And finally, just a reminder to everyone that the information that's being provided today is general information. It may not apply to your specific fact situation. If you are a condo director and you want to use the protection of Section 37 of the Act, you do need to get an opinion about your specific fact situation from your own professional. The webinar is not intended to provide you with opinions that protect you under Section 37 of the Act. In addition, if you're watching this webinar at a later date, the information in this webinar is current as of November 21st, 2025. Things change, so if you are watching this later than November 21st, be sure to check with your professionals to make sure that the information is still relevant. And also just a reminder, if you're watching from out of province, any reference to legislation is Ontario legislation, including the Condo Act. All right, so we are going to get started with our first speaker, and we have Neil Brady, who is going to talk to us about moving over to a VoIP system. Neil?
Thanks, Anya. I appreciate it. My pro tip is what to look for when shopping for a new VoIP phone system. So there are basically two models in the market today, a per seat model, which is the most common, and a call path model. Some of you may have made this switch a few years ago for some cost savings and technology improvements, but recent stats show it's a little over 30% of small and medium businesses that have made this change. One of the biggest advantages of moving to a VoIP system is having the ability to make and receive calls from your direct extension or your direct line on your computer, mobile phone, and desk phone all at the same time, or some combination of the three. So if you're on the go or you're working remotely, you won't miss any phone calls. There are also many integrations out there where you can utilize this service through your Microsoft Teams or your Zoom accounts, so which makes making outbound and inbound calls incredibly simple and convenient. VoIP has always been traditionally charged as a per seat setup, which means you're charged for every single user, even if some of those users rarely make or receive calls. So for example, if you have a 40-person office, but only 10 people are regularly on the phone, you're still paying for 40 seats. So it's a lot of wasted cost and capacity. With a call path model, you're only paying for the number of simultaneous calls your business actually needs. So if your company rarely has more than, let's say, 10 active calls going at once, you would only need 10 or 11 call paths, and all 40 employees can still have extensions, voicemail to email, and access to the fully featured system. So this gives you the same functionality at a fraction of the price. Beyond the cost savings, a call path model is also far more flexible. You can easily scale this up or down as your business changes. So for example, adding more call paths during a busy season or reducing them when things quiet down. You're not locked into a license for every user. My advice when shopping for a new VoIP system is to work with the Canadian providers who offer a call path model. There are not that many of them, so it might take a little research on your end. But to sum it all up, a call path VoIP system gives you lower monthly costs by matching what you pay to what you actually use, so you're not over provisioned. It offers you flexibility to scale as your business grows or changes, and it gives full access to every employee without paying per head. So it's a smarter, more cost-effective way to manage communications that grow with your business. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. And, in condo land, we always like to save money, so that's a great tip. All right. Moving on. Moving on, we have Kim Graveson, who is going to talk to us about mold and what to do to get rid of it. Kim?
Perfect. Thanks, Sonja, for having me here today. So there's thousands of species of mold, and it naturally occurs around us all the time. Stachybotrys, which is referred to as the black toxic mold, Cladosporium, Penicillium, and Aspergillus are all common molds that are found with water damage. So if you have mold, it's important that you deal with it because it could have negative health effects on building occupants. It's important if you have any water damage that you clean and properly dry the building so you don't cause any secondary damages such as mold. Further, mold can be an indicator that you might have another ongoing issue with the property. Often people notice mold around windows or bathrooms, and that can be as a result of condensation. So mold needs three things to grow. It needs water or moisture, temperature in the right environment, and food. And those can be things like drywall, dust, dirt, carpet, ceiling tiles, and other building materials. In my experience, if you see mold in the drywall, usually the backside is always worse. So inside that building wall cavity is the perfect environment for mold to grow. And if it has all three of those main ingredients in the right conditions, it can grow within 72 hours. So many years ago, we used to clean mold by scrubbing it with bleach. And so over the years, things change. There's new technologies. We learn more about mold, the health effects it has, and we no longer clean mold with scrubbing it with bleach. So if you have porous materials that are ceiling tiles, insulation, and drywall, they should be removed and thrown out. And you should remove it at least 6 inches beyond what you see in visible mold. If you have semi-porous or structural materials such as wood or concrete, it can be cleaned as long as they're structurally sound. And then if you have other materials that are affected by mold, such as metals, glass, or plastics, those items can almost always be cleaned. After you remove all those moldy building materials, cleaning is that key component of remediation. The tricky part about mold cleanup is that there's not only visible mold, but there's also the spores that are releasing from the mold growth. So HEPA vacuuming, damp wiping, and other abrasive methods are used to clean while keeping dust to a minimum. And as you get into larger scale mold jobs, they'll require things like containments, air scrubbers with negative pressure, and additional personal protective measures. Also note that there's no special requirements for throwing out any contaminated materials or items in a landfill, but as you're moving those moldy materials through the building, there are safety procedures for that. So the first step in remediation is really you have to understand why you have mold. So if you're not fixing the cause, that mold is going to continue to come back over and over again. So to summarize, in the event that you have mold, it's important that you seek advice from a certified mold contractor where they can guide you in those proper methods of cleanup. And procedures really vary based on the square footage and whether or not the HVAC or air handling system has been affected.
Great. Thanks, Kim. And for mold, we're going to move to Jeff, who's going to talk to us about lighting your space and operations. Jeff? Oh, looks like Jeff is still having a bit of trouble connecting. I'm going to skip you, Jeff. We'll come back to you and we'll move on to our next speaker, who is no stranger to our webinars. And that's Michele Farley, who is going to talk to us about the reality of increased fire inspections that are coming and what should we be doing to prepare. Michele?
Great. Thanks so much, Sonja. I'll give a little background before my tip, but in the last few years, we've seen a 10% increase in the number of residential high-rise fires and an increasing number of townhome fires. The Fire Marshal of Ontario has implemented new inspection mandates aimed at keeping our buildings and our people safe. These mandates require municipal fire departments to inspect all residential buildings annually, have shorter timelines for compliance, and allow for swifter and stricter enforcement. On January 1st, 2026, which is less than 6 weeks from now, our new Ontario Fire Code comes into effect. Most of the changes are editorial, administrative, which include renumbering, updating, standardization, and harmonization with national codes. But some of the changes will absolutely affect condo. So, in good news, they're now allowing for electronic record keeping rather than having to produce all your paper records. And they're now holding owners that rent out their units responsible for smoke alarm and CO detector maintenance. This protects the condo. Other changes include adding more CO detectors in some areas and on every level of a townhouse, new testing requirements for certain types of doors, clarification for allowances of lobby and corridor furniture, changes to your annual test standard S536, and high-rise smoke control testing, and who can perform integrated smoke control testing and S1001 integrated fire alarm testing. All changes that may affect you. Why will there be more inspections? Mainly to follow the Fire Marshal's Office mandate for local fire departments to perform multi-residential inspections, but also to check that you're adhering to the new fire code. And how do you prepare for those? Check your fire safety plans or your fire safety planning documents are up to date and you're implementing everything in them. Whether you have townhouses, high rises, even commercial units. Update your communications to your residents of their responsibilities and those that rent out their units, that they have new mandated responsibilities for smoke alarm and CO detector maintenance. Make sure your records are up to date and have your building audited if you're not sure, to confirm that you are in compliance. If you need help, ask for it. The fire department inspections are important, and enforcement keeps us all safe. So remember, this is about life safety. Thank you, Sonja.
Thanks, Michelle. And moving from fire, we're now going to switch gears and we're going to go all the way over to reserve funds. And we've got Jon Juffs with us. Jon, what's your tip with respect to reserve funds? And please explain what CPI, EPI, and INT is.
Thank you very much, Sonja. Certainly reserve fund planners do love their TLAs. And so we'll get into what all those three-letter acronyms are. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today on another Condo Friday. As a condo reserve fund whisperer, I am keen to see plans that have three different rates of change in them. Because if your plan is predicated on one rate of change, it's doomed to failure. So the three rates of change are the Consumer Price Index. This is a very common headline number that we see all over the place and monitor, and the Bank of Canada chases after and really does a good job of maintaining it in the 1 to 3% range. So what does it have to do with the reserve fund plan? Well, your column that's called annual contributions should be escalating in that 1 to 3% range. Right? So that keeps everybody happy. There's some predictability. It's not too large an increase, and it's easy to see. And life is rosy and there's unicorns. So we know that that doesn't always happen that way, and we have to sometimes have higher than expected increases, or sometimes special assessments or loans to get us back on track. The second one, of course, is EPI. EPI is the Expenditure Price Index, pretty closely aligned with the Building Construction Price Index published by Statistics Canada, and is predicated on primarily labor costs. And labor costs are increasing and labor productivity is going down. And so these costs are escalating at a much greater rate than CPI, somewhere in the 4 to 6% range. And to illustrate the Expenditure Price Index, so when you look at a spending that's estimated in today's dollars for something like $1 million, so say your window replacement or something like that, if you were only escalating it at 2% CPI, which would be wrong because we know they escalate much greater than that, it would appear in the future to be a $1.22 million project. But if you actually are estimating at 5% expenditure price index, then the project would be much closer to 1.63 million, or a $410,000, $420,000 gap. And those gaps have to be made up somehow. And this is how plans become underfunded, or trigger special assessment, or require a loan, or worse, you defer the work because you quote unquote can't afford it. The third one is INT, the interest earnings. And the interest earned on reserve is very conservative. And anybody who's done any level of investing of their own knows that conservative investments have low returns. And so we're talking about GIC rates, really. And that, needs to be looked at and revisited often. And you have to ladder those, because you're often sitting on a big pile of money that isn't super necessary at the time. It might be money being saved for 5, 6, 7 years down the road. You should be able to ladder your investments and earn somewhere in the 3 to 6% range, because there are these wonderful instruments now available from every lending institution. They're called market-linked GICs. So they're guaranteed investment certificates that are linked to the performance of the market. And so you will get not market returns, nothing like that, but you will get better than the classic GIC or savings account. So the takeaway, CPI, Consumer Price Index, should be the rate of change on your contributions. EPI, the Expenditure Price Index, is what your spending from reserve escalates at. And the INT, the interest rate, is where your earnings are coming from money sitting stagnant in accounts. Disclose them separately, stress test, do some what ifs with your reserve fund planner. Say, what if we don't, earn that kind of level of interest, and what if the EPI is a bit higher? And then see if the balances end up going too low or negative, and then make adjustments accordingly. And it might have to, once in a while, update your reserve fund study more frequently than every 3 years. Thanks again, Sonja, and thank you everyone for your kind attention.
All right, thank you, Jon. And Jon's one of the speakers who is at the Condo conference today. So if you're down there and you're watching us, make sure you go and give Jon a nice high five. Okay, moving on. We've got Shawn Trudel. He's going to be talking about timelines for tendering construction projects. So, Shawn, what are your tips with respect to that topic?
Thank you, Sonia, and happy Friday, everyone. The planning for your construction projects on your condos doesn't stop with your reserve fund plan. When you go out to tender, there's a couple different things that you want to consider, and they're largely related to the timelines for receiving the pricing, as well as the timeline for the board to review the pricing that's received. Often there's sort of two validity periods for tenders that are common. One of them would be 60 days, 60 calendar days, and the other one would be 90 calendar days. So what that means is when you receive the tender pricing for your construction projects, those prices through the bid bond are valid for that period, either 60 days or 90 days, with the thought being that a decision to proceed or not to proceed would be made or considered within that timeline. So what would be important when you go initiate the process to go to tender is to consider when the pricing will be received and how many naturally scheduled board meetings will take place. Good timing would perhaps allow maybe 2 board meetings to take place. Sometimes there's opening of the tenders, which is a special meeting, but to give sufficient time for the board to review the tenders, maybe take questions back to their consultant, and then review the questions questions and answers that they've received, and then selecting a contractor. So it's important to think about those, especially in the winter time. So another thing that we see happen over winter time is, of course, less frequent occurrence of board meetings, or perhaps the meetings are spread out a little bit longer. So consideration that you could have when you're approaching sort of the holiday time of year is to extend that validity period from 60 to 90 days, knowing that there's going to be a sort of a multiple weeks where it's going to be challenging to get everyone together or get questions answered. Sometimes there's maybe clarifications that are needed on tender. So really, just planning out the timing to receive the pricing, and then when those board meetings could be scheduled afterward can really help you in kind of having a smoother construction tendering process. So that's my tip. Thanks, Sonia.
Thanks, Shawn. And speaking of construction and projects, we've got Jim Wallace with us, who is going to talk about borrowing bylaws and preparing for the vote. So, Jim? You just need to unmute yourself. There you go.
There we go. Not my laptop. Okay, so what I am going to provide is a pro tip on how to get a borrowing bylaw passed when you're going through the loan process, because most condos are going to need it. And it comes down to when the information is going to be provided to the owners, because there's basically 2 paths. One is you get to the special general meeting where you're going to vote on that bylaw. And at that point, you provide all the information that has brought the corporation to this point. And that is there an engineer report saying this is how much we expect the repair to cost? Is there any more information? Has it gone to scope and spec and maybe even tender? Do you have a more clear idea? And that information, along with information on how the loan can work, is provided along with the borrowing bylaw all at once at this SGM. The other way is you give out that information, not so much piecemeal, but as you know it, even if you don't have all the information at the same time. So maybe you get that engineer report. At that point, you provide that to the owners with either a meeting or just by email, so that they know what is being looked at and what the problem could potentially be. And then a little while later, if they are looking at the loan option, you can give the owners some information on the loan, what the payments would look like, all the information that goes along with the loan. And then a little farther along, you may actually get to scope and spec and tender at that point, which is when you send that information and say, okay, we've gone through the tender. This is the contractor we've selected, and this is now the cost, and away you go. But that is the one other way that you can do it. Now, both paths work the same. I have seen, and this is a bit of the pro tip, is that as you get the information, providing it tends to have less pushback and less anger at the SGM, and there's more information given over a longer period of time for owners to absorb it. So at some point, you are going to have to get that vote passed. That borrowing bylaw will state what the maximum amount is on the loan, which is going to be set a little earlier, because at some point the board has to decide when are we going to issue the assessment, and that assessment amount will be what is in the borrowing bylaw, stating we will borrow up to a maximum of $2 million. So that has to be part of it, and that is when you would make that decision, because you have to know what that maximum amount is. You have to know what all the information is on the loan. So when the owners vote for the loan, they know what they are voting on. And the last thing on this pro tip is the board has to decide, are we still going through with this repair, even if they vote against the borrowing and the loan? And if the answer is yes, then everything else flows from that. And that's my pro tip.
Thanks, Jim. And for those of you that are really paying attention to this webinar today, I want you to see,
Yeah.
oh, look who's there. We've got Armand coming in. I was going to surprise everyone and see if they could find out what happened to Jim afterwards, but we'll see Armand a little bit later on. They're both at the Condo conference sharing an iPad to do this, so thank you for joining us. And we've got Jeff Ingram, who's been able to join us now. So Jeff, are you there? He's also at the Condo conference. Jeff, are you there?
I believe he's muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him unmuted. He's doing this on his cell phone. He's having a little bit of technical difficulty. Jeff, if you can unmute yourself, as soon as I see that you're unmuted, we'll throw the mic back to you. Okay, let's keep moving because we still have a lot to get through. So we're going to now sort of switch to insurance type related questions. And we have Nicole Daniels with us. And Nicole, you're going to give us a tip about insurance appraisals. And again, how can condos avoid costly mistakes?
That's right. Hi, everyone. So one of the most common and most costly mistakes that condo boards make, which we see, is actually relying on either outdated appraisals or incorrect metrics. And what we come across is a lot of condos who haven't had an up-to-date appraisal or haven't completed one ever. Now, what happens is in the event of a total loss, if your insured values are too low, what's likely going to happen is there won't be enough funds to fund a proper rebuild. And that shortfall is going to come back to the owners via special assessment. Additionally, without insuring to full replacement costs, on partial losses, it's possible that you might have a co-insurance clause present. And this means that you may be penalized in the event of a partial claim, forcing the condo to self-insure for a portion of the repair costs. Now, finally, boards that fail to maintain up-to-date replacement costs via an appraisal could actually also face liability risks for not fulfilling their fiduciary duty under the Ontario Condominium Act. So the good news is that these risks are preventable with a current and professional appraisal. So here are my top tips for what boards should do to avoid these risks. The first one is to have an appraisal done annually to ensure that you're keeping up with actual construction costs. One thing that we hear often is that the condos are simply increasing their values each year based on a flat multiplier, or that maybe they're keeping pace with general inflation. But for rebuild costs, this can be a misguided metric, which is what Jon had already discussed earlier during his presentation. And just for some context, over the past 10 years, Canadian CPI has rose approximately 28%. But the Toronto Construction Price Index that is put out by Stats Canada recorded a 125% increase over the same period of time. Now, this significant difference is a little bit exaggerated because of the very high increases that we saw during the pandemic years, but it still leaves those without current replacement costs in a very risky situation of being underinsured. Now, most reputable appraisers will provide 3-year programs with complimentary updates for one low fee, making it really easy for you to maintain adequate coverage. And these annual appraisals, ensure that you're adequately insured without overpaying on premiums, and they can waive those co-insurance clauses. So Additionally, hire an accredited professional appraiser who provides comprehensive replacement cost valuations that include all of the common property systems, materials, and landscaping. It should follow the standard unit per your bylaws, and it should also include demolition and removal and the required costs for necessary upgrades to bring the rebuild up to current codes and bylaws. Now, the last tip that I have to optimize the appraisal program is to align the appraisal effective date with your insurance policy renewal date. This is going to ensure that your values are the most current at the time of your renewal and helps to avoid any midterm adjustment fees. And we also recommend that you start the process 4 to 5 months in advance before your insurance renewal, because this is going to allow the appraiser to deliver your report early into the hands of your broker, giving them the maximum amount of time to secure the best coverage and the best terms for the condo. So the bottom line is that an up-to-date appraisal provided by an accredited appraiser protects owners, fulfills fiduciary duties, and can prevent costly coverage gaps on any loss. And boards that stay on top of this appraisal avoid financial surprises.
Thanks, Nicole. And speaking of insurance, another aspect of it, we've got Chris DiPietro with us. And Chris, what's your tip with respect to unfinished basements and standard unit bylaws?
Thank you, Sonja. I would like to talk today about the importance of unit owners knowing their standard unit description. The scenario I'd like to discuss is condominiums and renovations that have been done by a prior unit owner. Typically with townhouses, we occasionally see claims that are not adequately covered, where there may have been water damage or a sewer backup in the basement. In this scenario, the standard unit describes the basement as an unfinished basement. However, when the unit owner moved in, the basement was finished. Typically, the improvements and betterments are insured as part of the unit owner's insurance to the same limit of the contents coverage. So if you have $100,000 in contents, most condo unit policies insure improvements and betterments for an additional $100,000 as well. But some basement renovations are extensive and include game rooms, bedrooms, fireplaces, bathrooms, and sometimes kitchens. In these cases, you must be sure to speak to your broker to ensure your limit is adequate. When a loss such as this happens, there will be 2 insurance adjusters, one for the condo corporation and one for the unit owner. They use the standard unit description to determine which insurer pays for which damage. In the case of a standard unit description with an unfinished basement, the corporation's portion of this loss is very little, if anything. However, the unit owner's portion can be substantial. Now, while it's not common, there are standard units that are described as bare bones, where the corporation only insures the shell of the building, but nothing in the interior. No drywall, trim, doors, cabinets, etc. That is all the responsibility of the unit owner. It's important for the unit owner who is purchasing condominiums to know their standard unit description and discuss the improvements and betterments with their broker prior to closing, just to be sure that they're not underinsured. And most important, if you have a finished basement, is to have sewer backup and overland water coverage. It can be expensive, but there's a very good reason for that, as these claims are rather common. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And a good reminder for owners to make sure they've got insurance coverage on their units. All right. So, Jeff, I think we've got you set up. Thanks for sticking it out with us. And we've got Jeff Ingram with us today from the Condo Conference. Jeff, you're going to talk to us about lighting for your space and operations. What's your tip?
Great. Thank you very much, Sonja. And again, my apologies for the technical difficulties that I had earlier. So yeah, here's a quick pro tip that I always share with my clients. When most people think about upgrading their lighting, they think in terms of 1-for-1 replacements, old fixture out, new fixture in. And yes, that's a great start, but if we stop here and we're leaving a massive amount of savings and operations value on the table. The real win, the real transformation happens when we step back and look at how lighting interacts with the actual space and the way people use that space. Let me explain what I mean. Smart controls multiply savings sometimes by double. When we integrate smart controls like motion sensors, occupancy, vacancy sensors, daylight harvesting, scheduling, time of day dimming, we're no longer installing efficient lighting, we're installing intelligent lighting. In real cases, controls can double your energy savings when compared to simple LED retrofit. Why? Well, it's because controls reduce runtime. Lights only turn on when needed and adjust automatically when natural light is available or when occupancy changes. So not only do you save on energy, but you also extend the lifespan of the fixtures themselves. Running at a lower output and fewer hours means your LED investments last longer and your replacement cycle stretches significantly. Better operations and better visibility. Smart lighting doesn't just reduce costs, it makes your building smarter. You can reduce complaints about dark spots and overlit spaces. You can improve safety and visibility, pre-program lighting or staffing patterns, events or peak hours. You can create automated behavior instead of relying on staff to turn off the lights, so to speak. You can identify problems in fixtures remotely before they become failures, rather. And all of this translates into a smoother operation, less manual work, and more consistent lighting performance. You're building an intelligent electrical backbone for your future. This is a big one. It's becoming more and more important every year. By putting smart controls and modern lighting infrastructure in places today, you're essentially building a digital nerve system for your building. It gives you a platform ready for future integrations like EV charging stations, solar PV systems, battery storage, submetering, and demand management. Building automation expansion as well. Think of it like future-proofing. When you modernize your lighting intelligently, you're not only upgrading the bulbs, you're creating a connected electrical ecosystem. That means when you're ready for EV or solar or deeper electrification, the groundwork is already there. You're ripping things out and starting from scratch. You're not ripping things out and starting from scratch. You're simply adding to a system that was built to grow with you. In closing, so my takeaway would be this: lighting is no longer just about illumination. It's about energy intelligence, operational efficiency, and preparing your building for the next decade of electrification. If you're only thinking about one-for-one replacements, you're missing the full opportunity. But when you combine LEDs with smart control and forward-thinking planning, the savings are bigger, the operations are smoother, and the future becomes easier to build. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff, for that insight into what lighting can all do for us. I never even thought about that. So moving on, we have Kirsten Bahlieda with us, and she is going to talk about a pyramid communication style. Kirsten, what is a pyramid communication style?
Hi, everyone. So pyramid communication style, this really applies to email correspondence. It starts with the president of the board or another director that the board defines as the top of the pyramid. So it starts like this. The manager sends an email to the top of the pyramid, and that president usually polls everyone else on their board. They communicate with the directors and gain consensus on a board response to the manager. I'll explain a little bit further, as I really think this is a key communication strategy for condo managers to consider. Email conversations among directors wherein they are discussing their views, asking questions of each other, sharing their ideas, debating opinions and points. These can very quickly fill a property manager's inbox with email conversation. The president or top of the communication pyramid should gather the various director points and summarize these to the manager in one email. The manager then replies to all of the points in that one email that 5, 7, or more directors have raised and provides info all at once to everyone through the top of the communication pyramid. Again, usually the president, but not always. Decisions should be made in duly constituted board meetings, but often that is not possible as items arise between scheduled meetings. So ratification of between board meeting decisions recorded in the minutes at the next board meeting is a reasonable way to proceed. Of course, one should always be cautious on contract decisions or large dollar items outside of a formal board meeting environment. It is helpful to define in the management services contract the pyramid communication platform if you want to use it and be successful with it. But with proper application, this communication style can greatly reduce confusion and increase productivity. And as a manager, don't we just love that? Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kirsten, for that tip. Yeah, anything to manage that inbox, huh? And if you are at the conference tomorrow, Kirsten is moderating the emergency preparedness session, so go and see her there. All right, now we are moving on to Ashley Lamb, who has been on our webinars before. She's a member of our board of directors. And she's going to talk about how to make sure that realtors and purchasers know the most important rules in your condo. Ashley?
Hi, Sonja. Thank you. So first of all, I want to just discuss what my top 4 rules that I think should be communicated in advance are. So pet restrictions is a big one. Smoking rules. Can you smoke in your unit? Can you smoke on your balcony? What about the common elements and so forth? What is and what is not allowed to be stored in a parking space or on balconies? And then the last one would be rules around the upgrading of flooring. Can the unit have 100% laminate, vinyl, or hardwood flooring, or does there have to be a certain percentage of carpet laid in the unit? Also, the thickness of the underlay required for soundproofing, especially in the Huronia area. I do find that we do have a lot of wood construction condos, so the underlay underneath any new flooring is very important. So these rules are obviously laid out in the governing documents that can be requested when reviewing the status certificate after property has been purchased conditional, but it would be good for realtors and buyers to know these rules prior to negotiating an offer. Now, some ways to communicate these in advance would be for property management to make a list with the details on a single page document and distribute it to the unit owners once a year by email or by a hard copy. If the property, if a property is listed or is about to get listed, most of the time management is aware because the unit owner has been communicating with the property manager. So at that point in time, the property manager could provide the list and send it to that unit owner so that they can then pass it along to their agent. Now, their listing agent can actually add that document as an attachment to the listing. And then the buyer's agent will then have a copy of that, and then they can then pass it along to the buyer. So here we are already at the beginning stages of the search. Do you have a pet? Okay, you have a small dog. You have 2 cats. Do you smoke? These are questions that buyers want answers to well before putting in an offer. Also, you could communicate this at the AGM. So there are multiple times during the year that we could communicate these, the more important rules in advance. Now, if the property manager has a website, and if you're able to put the information on the website with a list of the buildings that you manage, that could help too, because that could just come up in a Google search when potential buyers are just searching the web and don't even have a realtor yet. Communicating important rules to realtors and potential buyers can help make buyers make a more informed decision prior to submitting an offer on a property. This would really help the process. Buying a condo, especially if you've never been a condo owner before, can be extremely overwhelming, especially if the purchaser is of an older generation. It is a lot for them to take in at once. This extra layer could help buyers avoid purchasing in a building that won't be the right fit for them, and they can make that decision long before putting in an offer. Not to mention, this is the best part, it will limit calls that you will get from agents, and property managers already have a lot to deal with on a daily basis. They don't want to be picking up calls going, what are the pet restrictions for this building or that building, or the restrictions on smoking. So it will limit your calls that you would be getting on a daily basis. That's really it.
Thanks, Ashley. And it will also limit all those enforcement letters that are going to have to go out after somebody moves in and they find out what the rules are. So those are
Well,
some
that's
great,
it.
those are some great tips on the type of information that we should be getting out there. All right. So finally, we've come to our last panelist today. And we have with us Armand Conant, who is at the Condo conference. He is going to talk to us about AI and whether boards and condo managers should be using AI. So we've talked about intelligent lighting. Armand, what's your tip about AI when it comes to usage by boards and property managers?
Oh, good question. Thanks, Sonja. And it's great to be here. I'm presenting again at Huronia CCI chapter, so I love presenting. Yeah, I'm going to talk quickly on AI. I've got about 4 points called tips, but we all know the AI is here. I mean, I just had an answer from a condo client to an owner using AI, and it exemplified some of the problems, which is it's not exact. It gave generalities, but did not answer the question and caused a lot more problems. But AI is here. We're seeing it in our law firm. We're seeing it from boards coming to lawyers. We're seeing owners using it and coming up with beautifully written letters to the corporation, of course, with mistakes in it because of AI. So I've really got the 5 tips I wanted to talk about in using AI. And this is directed more at the corporation and management. It is a useful tool. That's the key. But it is not the be all and end all. In fact, it should only be a starting point because it's fraught with still a lot of problems. So the first one is privacy. And what I explain to my clients is that as an example, ChatGPT is not confidential. A lot of people think it is. Hey, I'm putting data in, I'm asking it to draft something or give me an answer or give me whatever. It's not confidential. So the first one is never include personal or confidential information in an AI prompt. If you do, that could get out because it does not protect it. That's very, very important. And of course, as we all know, we, the corporation, and of course, management have a duty, if management companies have nothing else under PIPEDA, to protect privacy and information. The next one is, as I said earlier, AI is a starting point. It's a good tool. We use it. Others do help, say, draft an article or maybe the start of a comment. But it makes mistakes. You've got to use AI only as a starting point. Always review it first. Never send it out to your residents or the board or whoever you're sending it to unless you've really checked it. The example is they don't get data from case law. And I've seen AI come in. I've asked it to draft something and I look at it, of course, and it quotes a case that doesn't even exist because AI is designed to give you what you want to hear to whatever it might be, a document, an opinion, a resolution. It is not there giving you an unbiased approach as your professional. The next one is very, very important for the boards. Remember under the Condo Act, under Section 37, 3B, if the board relies on the written opinion of the professionals, then they're exempt from liability. If you rely on AI without having it verified, you could lose that exemption. So always remember that one. Data, I've got 2 more quick in about the last 10 seconds. Sonja, I know you're watching. Remember, it's kept off-site, and the condo corporation still remains responsible for the data that goes on the server for the AI. Even though they're looking after it and giving you the opinion, you're responsible for it. The last one I'll say is remember the practice direction from December of 2024 from the CAT, Condominium Authority Tribunal. If AI is used, you've got to disclose it. AI, you must make sure because it gives you incorrect information. Misuse can lead to a dismissal of your claim or even severe cost sanctions. So AI is a great tool. It's coming, it's getting better, but be very careful in using it at this time.
Thanks, Armand. AI scares me. And
All of us.
Yeah, I don't want to go anywhere near it.
But it's coming. It's going to be there, and we've got management companies using it. Yep.
All right. So those are our speakers for today. We do have some time to answer some questions, and we've gotten some questions in. So this is a call out to anybody who has some burning questions they want answered from one of our speakers. We've got a whole bunch here that have a variety of knowledge from a variety of industries. So this is a great time to get your questions in. Put them into the Q&A, and we will try and answer as many as we can. So the first question I want to put out there goes to Kim. And Kim, how do you find a good mold contractor, or do you have any recommendations?
I have to unmute.
Yeah, you'll need to unmute there, Kim.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I mean, Google is great. You can search certified mold remediation contractors in your area. It's important that they have the proper certifications to do mold remediation, making sure that they have proper insurance and liability insurance. So they do need both environmental and general general pollution and general liability, excuse me, as well as workers' compensation.
All right, Kim. And what are the certifications people should be looking for? What are the keywords?
So IICRC it's an educational body that's out of the States, and anybody that does mold remediation is certified through the IICRC.
All right, great. Thank you. Michele, here's a question for you. Is there any checklists out there for new fire code updates?
That's a great question. It's a little hard to create a standardized checklist because there's so many different changes, and a few of the changes refer to other standards that have changes. So it gets a little complicated. We're working on one in-house to at least get those key points out there. But at this point, we're trying to do as many educational webinars as we can. There isn't a standardized checklist yet from the from the fire department, from the fire marshal's office, or available that I'm aware of.
Okay, that might be an upcoming webinar in 2026, so stay tuned. All right, and while I have you on the hot seat, are there any updated regulations on electric scooters and charging units, especially when we're dealing with multi-level buildings?
No. They are working on it, which is wonderful. There will be some changes coming right now. It's best practice. I know we've done some webinars on it, but currently there isn't any new changes that have come out. It's generally get an ESA certificate, use your best practices, and look at your rules and regulations and see what you do say about them, if anything at all.
Okay, I'm going to take you off the hot seat. Nicole, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Do brokers increase property values when providing insurance quotes?
Well, they can sometimes make recommendations, but we generally suggest against this. The tools that they have, although great for red flagging when properties might be under or overvalued, they truly just lack precision. And often the software that they're using is based on US costing sources. So the best reality for condos, if they want to have replacement cost values that truly reflect the cost to rebuild without overcovering and paying more in premiums, is to have an appraiser come in, because they're going to know how to assess the specific features of each building based on the geographic location, the unique features, the amenities, and also be able to determine those demolition and removal costs and the building code and bylaws. Again, something that is sometimes ignored by those software. The other thing with the broker is they're not going to be the ones who want to tell you the replacement cost, because then they could be held liable. They're going to make you sign off on something that says, we have not suggested this. Therefore, having an appraiser come in, that shifts the liability to the experts and provides that peace of mind.
Okay, thanks. Chris, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. You talked about the bare bones standard unit in your tip. Can you give us some ideas of what the benefits of having a bare bones standard unit is?
Well, for the condo corporation, a lot of times I'm asked what the advantage is. And bare bones, most of the losses are water damage. We see that a lot. And when that happens, there's cabinets to be replaced, flooring, trim, and it goes on and on. Well, with bare bones, the corporation may not even have a claim. It's all on the unit owner. So in the long run, that will save premium for the corporation, because they could be claims free. You could have 3 different claims with 3 different unit owners, and if you didn't have bare bones, that could affect your premium considerably down the road for insurance. But it could end up where you have no claims at all for the corporation. So that's one of the benefits. And also another benefit would be, if the building's insured for 10 million, if it's bare bones, it might be insured for 7 million, and you would save the additional premium.
All right, so some things to think about. Might not be beneficial for everyone, but definitely something to discuss and see if it works for your condo. All right. Next question. I've got Kirsten, you're on the hot seat right now. You had some great tips about how do we manage communication. What are your thoughts about annual calendar planning? And do you have any tips in respect to that?
Great question this time of the year in my industry. Savvy boards and managers put an annual meeting calendar in place before the year begins. It may fluctuate if a participant schedules an appointment or a vacation, but it provides a guiding point to focus conversations back to as items arise throughout the year. It also ensures certain annual milestones are properly considered, such as the importance of a budget planning meeting, or a meeting after your AGM to appoint officer positions and orient new directors. Very important. This preemptive action also gives you a chance to check in with everyone's schedule preferences beforehand to ensure that you have the best opportunity for quorum versus a more reactionary style, which finds you scrambling for a date that works for all when an important matter needs to be discussed in a timely manner. Pro Ultra Manager tip: plot out the full moons on your calendar and a few days before and after, and black those out for meetings. You'd be amazed what a difference it makes. Thanks, Sonja.
Thanks, Kirsten. I always say things happen around those moons. There's a good pattern that's out there. All right, I think we have time for
Amen.
one more question. Jeff, if you're able to unmute yourself, there people are interested in the cost savings when it comes to these intelligent lighting systems versus LEDs alone. Can you give us an sort of a little bit of a numbers idea of what are condos looking at if they were to switch to these intelligent lighting systems versus just having LEDs?
Yeah, Sonia, typically smart controls add an extra 20 to 60% energy savings in many cases and can double the savings compared to LEDs alone themselves.
Wow. Okay, so that's a pretty good savings there. All
Yeah.
right, so that takes us to the end of our webinar. Thank you to all of our speakers for joining us today, whether you are in your office or at the Condo conference. Thank you to Debbie Dale for managing that chat box. Your fingers must be tired. There was a lot of stuff going in there. If you are a property manager and you haven't put your name and company name in the chat box, be sure that you get it in there so that you can record your attendance at today's webinar. So that we can give that information to the CMRAO so that you can claim credit for today's webinar. Don't forget to go into your own account and actually claim your credit online. And before we wrap things up, I want to take another opportunity to thank our sponsors for today's webinar. Thank you to Aaliyah Associates, Condominium Lawyers, Pretium Consulting Engineers, Common Ground Condo Law, and Engineering Link for sponsoring today's webinar. Also, don't forget to check out the CCI Huronia website, ccihuronia.com, for all of our upcoming events. We do have our last webinar of 2025 scheduled for December 12th. It's our annual case law update. So all of our condo lawyers will be joining us, and we'll be updating you on what the CAT and other tribunals as well as the courts have said about condo related issues. So you don't want to miss that, and you can register for that webinar by going to our website, ccihuronia.com. And as always, our webinars are free of charge. And if you missed any of our webinars, also check us out on YouTube or on our past events tab, and you'll find the recordings of our webinars there. If you have any ideas for upcoming webinars or speakers, or you want to be added to our email list to find out what's happening at CCI Huronia, be sure to send an email to admin@ccihuronia.com. Tell us your ideas for upcoming webinars, suggestions for speakers, and request to be put on our email list if you are not on there already. And if you are looking for some other events, if you're not going down to the condo conference today or tomorrow, there are some other events happening across the province. CCI Golden Horseshoe, it will be having their Lawyers, Guns, and Money event on November 28th. And then on December 4th, they will be doing a webinar on unlocking the secrets for new owners and boards. CCI Toronto, who's very busy today doing the condo conference, is having their holiday lunch and legal update on December 5th. CCI London is having their holiday luncheon, Navigating the CAT, on December 4th. CCI Eastern Ontario, our friends in Ottawa, are very busy. On November 26th, they're doing the Director's Certificate Program, Course 108, Repair, Maintenance, and Change Fundamentals. On November 27th, they've got an event creating possibilities, how to support senior owners to age in place. And on December 3rd, they're doing their holiday luncheon and legal panel. And Grand River chapter is doing their holiday lunch and learn on December 5th. And if you want to register for any of these events, the easiest thing to do is just go to our national website, cci.ca, scroll down to the bottom right hand of the landing page, and you'll see all the upcoming events there. And you can click on those events and it'll take you directly to the websites for each of these chapters where you can register for those events. So that is it for today. We finished right on time. So thank you to everyone. And I'm Sonja Hodis. This is CCI Huronia. From CCI to all of you, wishing you a great weekend. Hope those that are attending the conference have a great time at the conference. There's lots of great events happening there, lots of learning to be done and networking. And I hope to see you on our next webinar, December 12th, case law update. And don't forget, CCI is your condo connection. Have a great weekend, everyone.